So it's review time once again. We teased this with our last video and here we have it in front of us. This is a 2.2 Reximex Accura. We're going to see if this can copy the Reximex Pretensis that we did a review on and leave me with a great big smile on my face, which is no mean feat for a pre-charge rifle coming from a Springer man. So let's see what features you get with the gun, and then later on, as you know, we're going to test its performance over the Chronograph. We'll see how heavy she is, put a few targets up at range, and in general see just what we think of this hopefully spectacular PCP rifle. So let's move on and see what you get with your Accura. Okay, so features. As always, we start off at the rear of the rifle. There's quite a lot of adjustability on the go here. At the rear you can see the butt pad can be adjusted for length of pull, so basically you can make your already rather large gun into a stupidly large gun. The butt pad is also adjustable up and down for better eye alignment with your scope and overall easier handling. The cheek piece can also be raised. You may have spotted that in the introduction. There's a little grub screw hiding away in there, so you can loosen that up, adjust it and then lock it in place. And the rifle, as you can tell, does have, I will say, quite a nice stock. That thumb hole is quite a nice looking thing. But again, that's a handling thing. We're not going to dawdle on that too long here. You've got a similar safety to the Reximex Pretensis, and in fact if you look at the action you'll see there are quite a lot of similarities there with the Pretensis. Side lever is still the same, you've got the same scope rail on top, and on top of that you have the power adjuster on the right hand side. A neat little feature that shows it's not just a hunting gun, or a target gun I should say, but it could also be used for hunting and just even some backdoor plinking, which is quite nice, but we'll do a little test with that later on. Slightly further, we have, how could we not mention, the rather monstrous 425cc bottle that comes on the Accura. As I may have mentioned already, I am not looking forward to the Chronograph section. And slightly further on top of that, how could we definitely not mention the almost pool cue-esque barrel that we have on the go. My God, it better be the most accurate rifle on the planet, because let's be fair, you could be sat 25 yards away and rest the barrel against the bullseye. It's pretty huge. To its credit, I will say, the new models that have come out, they have actually cut the barrel down a tiny little bit, and on top of this there is also a baffle system on the go inside of that shroud as well. She is rather quiet when you fire it, but you'll have a listen to that in a second. Underneath this bit of textured forestock here you will see there is also a fill probe, at least hopefully you can see it, and there should be a pressure gauge tucked in next to it in there too. Now I will say, to use the quick fill probe that's not really a quick fill probe on this gun, you have to use this adapter. A little nitpick of mine, to be honest, I'm not a fan of this setup. We picked on the Crowell Puncher Pro 500 for this, and I'm going to pick on this already as well. The guys who make these, please make the quick fill probe in the gun an actual normal size, at least for the UK market. It's a quick fill design. You shouldn't have to plug anything on the end of it. You might as well have just given us a threaded probe to begin with and had done with it. Again, little mini rant already, not just picking on this gun, there's quite a few out there like it, but I wish they had perfect that maybe. Guys, if you're watching, get onto it. Moving on, you also have a accessory rail that comes in the little pack of goodies that you get with the gun, so you can fit your bipod on there and all that sort of stuff. Slightly further ahead of that you can also see you have sling swivels front and back, so if you want to you can put your sling on there, or if you really wanted to and you didn't want a bipod back sort of thing, you could put your bipod attached into the stud that you can see on the front end. So overall it's an interesting gun, and you do get some nice features on there. You also get 2 mags as standard and the single shot tray, as you can see here. So feature wise, especially when it comes to adjustability, it's looking good, but it's about as long as the Titanic, and will it sink when we put it on the scales? Well, let's whip them out and find out. Okay, so we got it on the scales and she comes out at 7.82 pounds. So despite the size of it, it's not actually as heavy as what you might have thought. You could easily take this around hunting with you. However, what is it like actually in the shoulder? As we always say, a terrible balance can make the gun feel much heavier than what you think. So let's chuck a scope on there and find out. But before we do that, you knew it was coming. We need to see how to load those mags. So let's crack them on the table and have a little look. Alrighty then, so if you've seen our Reximex Pretensis video, you can skip this ahead as it works the exact same, as you can probably tell. In fact, if you've seen one of our Crowell videos or you own a Crowell, you can skip ahead again, because the mag, although thinner, works in the exact same way. But just in case you are new to these, what you're going to want to do, if you take a look at the dial, you can see an arrow spinning clockwise. Take the top, you can see the clear part there, spin her all the way around. And what you're going to want to do is, when you hold it in place, and make sure you are holding it there because that spring is under tension, get your pellet and load it straight through the top. Put one finger out the back if you can, covering up the hole like you can see there, because otherwise you're going to get a pellet jumping through. And that will basically lock the mag in place. So after that, simply load the rest straight through the top like so, so the skirt is facing you. And when you're done, you are ready to rock and roll. So, mag loading, not too bad at all. But let's get back to the fun stuff again. Let's put the gun to the shoulder and let's have a look at that trigger and see what we really think. Alright, so handling, what do we think of the gigantic Accura? Now, one thing I'm going to say is I need to eat a little bit of humble pie, because do you remember in the feature section I sort of had a little laugh about the fact that you can extend the butt pad, and almost hinting, why would you on a gun that's already huge? Yes, I have. I have extended the butt pad just a tiny little bit. The reason for that is, and I know why they've done it, the actual length of pull out the box isn't as long as you think it would be for such a gigantic gun. The rest of the gun, the other 70% of it goes on from here, to be fair. But back here, they've kept it quite nice and compact. And obviously the reason for that is, if you're fitting an extendable butt pad on there, you can keep it short, and say people of smaller stature, maybe female shooters out there, can shoulder it and get comfortable, I should say, with it in its standard setting. When you can adjust it back like this, then you can focus on fitting it for people with freakish long arms like me, or your average bloke on the street, I suppose. But essentially, one of the reasons why I've fallen in love with this stock, which is odd for me because it's a plastic one, you've heard me or seen me on forums before say, I don't mind plastic, but it's tactical crap that I'm not the biggest fan of at all. I like this because of how you can basically fit it for anyone. Even for me, I'm a bit of an odd customer, I will admit. And that just fits me like a charm. You can see I've raised the cheek piece a tiny little bit. I've extended the butt pad. And I can hold that pretty damn still. The other thing that's contributing into that is that despite the huge size of it, you may have seen if you've watched the scale section, she comes out about 7.8 pounds, which is probably not as much as what you was all thinking when you looked at the girth, the bulk of this gun. However, look at this. You know we do this test to show how light and such a gun is. You wouldn't be doing that with some of the guns we have on this channel, but this, despite the monstrous length of it, just to show you it is the same gun, that is remarkable. It really is. But it's not all sunshine and roses. For instance, one little thing that does annoy me is this here. Now, I say annoy, it's more of a little nitpick than anything else, and you would, I'm pretty sure, get used to it. When you're shouldering the gun, let me just put it into the shoulder there. When you're shouldering it, you can feel that hole in the bottom of the stock. Now, this isn't the only gun to do this. We picked on the Puncher Pro 500 with that big walnut stock for the exact same thing. Again, if it's the only way it can be done, fair enough. Also, what I will say is we do have the bipod rail on the underside here. To be fair with you, it's not really a defense in saying that, because even if you take that off, or if you just put in your hand there, like we said, I've got long arms and even I feel like I'm reaching all the way there. If that could have been done differently, so your hand wasn't resting on what feels like a black hole, there's nothing there, it would have been a little bit nicer. Is it going to put you off the gun? Well, that's up for you to decide. Not really me, but it is what it is, and it's got to be mentioned. Just a bit weird. The other thing I'm going to say is the safety. Now, I picked on this, it won't take too long. I picked on this with the Pretensis, if you've seen that video. It's okay, that's all it is. And I know safety probably wouldn't put anybody off of buying a gun, but you can switch it off pretty easy. You simply use the side of your knuckle. As you got your trigger finger in a safe position, you simply bunt it like that, you've turned it off. It's turning it on that's the problem. You've got to either do this, which I don't really want to be doing, or you've got to bloody wrap your hand around, or you can see I'm little bit of a struggle to get to it. It's not the best thought out safety on the planet. Just a little toggle here, safely away from the trigger, would have been absolutely perfect. So you can stay on target, flick off, or flick back on as you're looking around to see what you can see. What I will mention is the loading on this thing is buttery smooth. One of the smoothest load guns we've ever had. Watch this, little finger, pull that back, just like that. The other thing is, we'll put the mag in now and I'll show you. It's the exact same when you load a pellet in. Just so you can see, there's pellets in there. And they're not just any pellets, those are superfields. If you've had a superfield in your hand, you know how rock solid those skirts are. So if this is going to clunk on any pellet, it's these. So if I can do that without... Quite went well, didn't it? Yeah, to load the mag, there's a slot on the back of the mag and there's a groove inside the breech or action area. Line them up, push them through, you're good as gold. Now watch this. Superfield, little finger. How nice was that? There was a tiny little bit, still not really notchy as such, but you could feel when it was starting to push the pellet in, but it was like pushing it through butter. There was no clunk like you get with some guns. Right then, so let's, already left the safety off. Right then, so then, let's take aim at something. I don't know what, because it's not zeroed in. Let's have a go at that trigger. Okay, I really, really like that, but I will say not everybody will. What I mean by that is, let's put another one in. You can see how smooth that was. Little finger test. What I mean by that is the Reximex triggers are more of a single stage than they are a two stage. You've got the tiniest sort of resistance on the second stage before it breaks. Now it is an adjustable unit, but I will say even when adjusted, it still feels a bit more like a single stage, but you can simply add the pull weight on there. Still not a two stage trigger in my opinion. So I take aim, there's the faintest, almost fake second stage. You can see me sort of wiggling it a little bit there. And then it breaks, and you could see it didn't stop as such, it just pushed almost straight through. Nice, don't get me wrong, very nice in fact for me. I love triggers like this. When we reviewed the Artemis M16, that's very similar out the box. Very, very, very nice and light, but without being dangerously light, because you have got that little travel there. But I simply take aim, and off she goes. I like it, but what I'm getting to is, if you like more of a solid second stage, like your record triggers and things like that, this is not going to do it for you. This is more of a single stage. But again, for a target trigger, and even for me for hunting, I think that's pretty damn good, to be honest. Overall, handling-wise, I am a massive, massive fan. The other thing that I like about it, you can probably hear that, there we go, is that click, we're empty. The other thing that I like about it is how quiet it is. So I'm going to load the second mag in with superfields, straight through. Have a listen to this. I'll shut up now so you can hear it. There's a tiny little bit of noise from the action itself, a pong that you get with some Turkish guns, some ping, some pongs, this one pongs. But yeah, overall, it's whisper quiet on the muzzle end, so even if you wanted a gun for hunting, you're pretty much set out the box. If it's accurate, and if it's consistent. I'm not going to mention if it only has a shot count of 10 shots like we do sometimes, because let's be fair, we both know that's not going to happen. In fact, I'm dreading this. But at the same time, yeah, let's whack the chrono out and let's see what this big old thing can do. Okay, so chrono time. I'm just going to do a very quick breakdown of this. We're going to be using the JSB jumbo pellets. Main reason for that is because it would be fun to compare this to the Pretensis video that we did, where we used in 177 the JSB, I think it's just JSB heavies, isn't it? The 10.3, I'll say it right in a second, 10.34 grain pellets. Well, these are 18.13, so they're up there for a 2.2, I'll put it that way. So it'd be an interesting comparison. The rifle's filled to just under, if you can see that, 240 bar. Apologies if you can't. Main reason for that is because the Reximex rifle is very much like the Kral, I believe, are fitted with burst discs, and when a burst disc is installed in the gun, you're better off filling under max pressure than scarily close to it, I'll put it that way. If the disc ruptures, which is a safety precaution obviously, it stops anything worse potentially happening with the gun. If the disc ruptures, the gun has to then be sent back to be repaired with a new disc in there and such like that. So don't fill it to max if you can help it. The other thing we're going to say is, apologies for the wires and such, that's a charging bank for the phone or the GoPro, depending on what's going to need it the most, because we could be here a while. And as you can see, it's, I think, the first time I've had a bottle of water proudly on show there, because it's about 29 degrees. I could be out here for probably almost 2 hours, I'm imagining, with this, and I'm not going to have that much fun doing it. So you're welcome, revel in my suffering. But anyways, that's that out of the way. Let's get to chronograph testing and see what you get with your Accura. Okay, so a bit of a messy one, this one. Of all the things that we could have prepared for and the thing that could let us down, the battery's gone. So at the minute we're sitting at, what is that, about 230-ish bar, if you can see that, and we've gone through 40 shots. So I'm going to save this group, as you can see there. Save that, and I'm going to have to put a new battery in. We shall resume in a moment. Alright, so accuracy testing time. We've got the chronograph test out the way. We have got some of our usual suspects here, as you can see, including our two oddballs. We have the Crosman Premier Ultra Magnum domes, which are 14.3 grain. We have the Rifle Premium Series pellets, which on the tin, they're listed at 18.67, I believe, off memory. They're not. Pay no attention to that. If you actually weigh them yourself, they're more like 19.1, 19.2. So they're a heavier pellet than what they pretend they are. Slightly further along, we have the Norma S-Target Match flatheads. And as we come back, we have the oddballs. We have the Apollo Dome pellets. And on the right, we have the SMK Dome Spitfires. Now, how could we not test the Spitfires when the sister to this rifle, the Pretensis, shot so bloody well with them? In fact, it was the best group we got out of all of them at 40 yards, even beating JSB. But as we mentioned JSB, you probably sat there thinking, well, where is JSB? Where is FX that you've been using lately? Well, inside this really, really nice little pellet container that a good friend of mine, Justin, over at Target Time UK, which is their YouTube channel, definitely go over there and subscribe. He has actually made this for me, and inside here you will see, off the left, we also have our WS Superfield, as you can tell. we have the JSBs and we also have the FX pellets. Now these are the jumbos that we use for the chronograph section, so they're the 18.13 grain off memory, can't quite remember. And down here we have the FXs, which are 16 grain, so the same as your air arms and such like that. So we've got a pretty good selection. The other thing, I have another piece of thanks to give. The target that we're using, the target at the moment is at 27 yards, was also made for me by a good friend of mine, Rupert, over at the Longwater Air Target Club in Norfolk. Massive thank you, Rupert. Honestly, mate, I was long overdue a new target. The old Milbro one we was using was falling apart, as you could see. This one though, mate, is absolutely superb and it is going to last forever. If you're in the Norfolk area, definitely check out the Longwater Air Target Club. It is a great place to be. But that's it for our arse kissing, we'll call it. That's it for that. Let's move on next to the fun bit. So let's have a go at our accuracy testing. So 27 yards, we'll see which pellet group's the best, and then we'll push it back to 40 yards. So we're going to switch the camera off, do some testing, and we'll report back straight away. So then, accuracy testing, which pellet came out on top? Well, this one's actually pretty tricky because they all did really, really well. Now, we weren't shooting at the longest range, like we said, 27 yards, which is pretty good hunting range for a 2.2, but even a 2.2, you can easily stretch that out further than that if you wanted. The worst group we had were the Crossmans, unfortunately. You can see there, I'm not even going to bother with the 5p coin, a little bit all over the place. I think we might have two more or less in the same hole in the top right, but then look at the rest of them. As we come down a little bit and left, we have the Apollos, which actually did the best I think we've ever seen them do on this channel. We get the 5p coin, don't get me wrong, it's not 5 pence at all, but I reckon you would almost get that under a 20 pence, maybe a bit sticking out the top right up there, but not bad at all. After that, we have the Norma S-Target Match, which are the flatheads. You can see there, nice little cluster in the middle, but can I just about get the main cluster under 5p coin? Not quite. There's a little tuft out the right, and obviously you had one flyer low and left there. To their credit, they're the lightest pellet on test. I believe off memory they're about 14 grains, so the wind might have knocked them about a little bit, but not the best group on the card, but still really not bad. As we come up, we have the rifle pellets. Now these I didn't think were going to be that good because they are really rather heavy, to be honest, and really thick skirts as well. But to my amazement, they actually did really, really well. That's pretty much a 5 pence group down there. As we come across, I know you're all chomping at the bit to wonder how the Spitfires did. Well, here's the Spitfires. As you can see, one little flyer low and left, almost a 5 pence group again. Honestly, the new Spitfire pellet, even to those, the naysayers out there, granted, they might not work with every barrel, but they're definitely worth a try because they're really not too bad. One low and left shot might have been me, probably the pellet maybe weren't the, maybe a damaged skirt, probably something like that, who knows. But then we have the top three. So we have got Superfield, which you can see here, put the 5p coin down, and it's pretty much gone. After that, we have the JSB Heavies, or the Jumbos, I should say. Now, the main cluster is eaten by the 5 pence piece, but we had one shot went off to the right. Could be wind, could be a dodgy skirt. Again, the JSBs, great pellets, but you do get the occasional naff skirt that might have just crept straight past me. So they're going to make it through because, like I say, that one is just a bit extreme. As we come up, we have the FXs, and those are pretty much gone. Just one little tufty bit coming out the left there. So it was between FX and maybe the rifles. I didn't quite know which one of those two, or the JSB, which one of those should go through. We're going to put the FXs through, and the reason for that is because we're going to be shooting at 40 yards, as I'm sure you all know, and the rifles, because of the weight of them and those thick skirts, they're not the most energy efficient pellet, at least in sub 12, and it's going to be a little difficult, I think, trying to get groups with them at 40, but we don't know. If we get time, we'll chuck the rifles in at 40 yards for a bit of fun as well. But that's our 27-yard testing done. What I'm going to do, because it is an absolutely gorgeous night, as you can see, and the wind has calmed down a tiny little bit, we're actually going to set the target back up at 27. We're going to fire those 3 different pellets off again at the 27-yard marker up there and see which one on camera does the best. And the one that does the best will push out to 40 yards and have a bit more fun with it. So let's get the target set up and let's have a bit of fun. so 25 yard or 27, I keep doing that. It's not, you can tell it is definitely further than when we did our usual 25 yard testing, just by a couple of strides. 27 yard testing, I should say, and it is the truth, look, because it's written down there on pen. Right, who did the best, who did the worst? Now there's a couple of things I will explain. Number one, you'll notice with the jumbos I cheated a little bit and I did a second group, and that's because I knew the pellets could do better. I just gave my heart rate a little bit more time to settle down. On top of that, I sieved through and basically hand picked the pellets to put through. I didn't just reach in blindly and then load it, and that was it. As you can tell, we was using the single shot tray to shoot these, not the mags, and basically it was a case of I want to do that again because that's ridiculous. I know we can do better than that. And boy, oh boy, did we. But let's start with what we originally started with, the RWS Superfield. And they really are a cracking pellet, but I am going to mention something a little interesting with them in a second. Now, that is a really solid cluster. What I will say, if you look carefully, perhaps if I pick it up a little bit, there is one I think went a little bit high. Can you see that there? That on the right is a crease, I'm fairly certain, but you'll know that more on the when you watch the video footage back than what I will know looking down the scope. And 5p piece of truth, and yeah, we have just pretty much annihilated it, simple as. So you can get a lovely 5p group with this gun at 27 yards with Superfields, we know that much. Next up was the Jumbo. Now the original Jumbo group still wasn't terrible, but I knew it could do better, so I did sort of cheat a little bit, and we did it again, didn't we? And it's a bloody good job we did, because look at that. That is madness. Now bear in mind this is a 470 pound gun, or at least that's what we charge for them anyway. There's no complaints there, is there? Just move it over there like that and you can see, other than you might see a dear little crease on the right hand side, maybe if I pan it across, maybe not. It's funny, I can see it with the naked eye a tiny bit, but not through the camera. Yeah, it's gone. Now the FXs, I don't know what's going on. For instance, if you take a look, when we tried it off camera, it was pretty damn good. In fact, it was probably a better group, I think, in the end than what we had with the Superfields. But on camera, something's not quite right. If you have a look, we've got one flyer low and right. We've got another one off to the right itself of the main cluster, and it's still not bad. It's not bad at all, in fact. In fact, maybe with another gun, or if we didn't know the gun could do that, I might even say that's not bad at all, and we'll move on from there. But there's something weird going on. I'm wondering if maybe the wind picked up for this. I'm not sure. The reason why I say that is because if you take a look at the way the pellets are almost slashing across the card. Can you see the way they're peeling off to the right as they hit? Not so much the flyer over there for whatever reason, but look at these few here. You can see there's streaks going off to the right. I'm wondering if they're getting broadsided a little bit. If I bring it up, you can see the way the tree's blowing there. It's going across that way, and on top of that, you can see there's a little alleyway which takes you basically to like a great big, almost like a, not canyon, but that sort of thing. Fields and dips and all sorts, other than the one behind the camera. So whether that's being blasted with that when I was aiming down the sight, who knows? But I tell you what, let's set the target up at 40 yards, because I'm not happy with that at all, because I know that can do better. We're going to set the target up at 40 yards, and we're going to try all three of them all over again. It's only fair, isn't it? One thing I'll mention though, you know I praise RWS Superfields non-stop. It's usually what we chronograph with, and it's what we would have chronographed with today, if not for the fact that we used heavies with the Pretensis, and like we've already said, it'd make an interesting comparison. But you can see one of the weaknesses of Superfield now. That thick skirt means they're not, although they're very consistent with the way they're made. I mean, let's just pop that open there. No real misshapes or anything in there, is there? At least not as far as I can see at this moment in time. But that thick skirt means they're not particularly efficient when it comes to energy numbers and such. And if you take a look at the impact point on the Superfields there, now look at the Jumbos, you can see, although the cluster is definitely a smidge lower, considering they're what, not quite 3 grains, entire 3 grains heavier, you can see the Jumbo is almost catching up at 27 with the Superfield. So there you go, good old Jumbo and Superfield. You can see where the limitations are a little bit with them. Again, not knocking them, they're one of my favourite pellets of all time, same as the Super Domes, but there you go. We have to be impartial and unbiased on this channel, unlike certain news media outlets that's around these days. But the less said about that, the better. We do not want to get taken off air. So let's move the target now to 40 yards, have a bit of fun with it, and let's see out of the three which one comes out tops then. Will the Jumbos beat the Superfields? Will the FXs actually come from the back and end up being on top? Don't take that out of context. Let's find out. Okay, so our 40-yard target is set. Okay, this time maybe not quite 40 yards. There's a tiny little gap back there, as you can see, but close enough. As we come back through, you can see things are a little different this time. The amazing Dora backpack is in fact not on the bucket, but on the table round there. Very good reason for that. Number one, there are some rather nasty vines growing through underneath that metal bench you can see back there, which I do not really want wrapping around my legs or backsides. And there's some rather delicious looking bird turds on the bucket that I do not want on the backpack. So we're having to shoot through the stanchions today, which I don't really want to do, and see how we get on. So, with the excuses and such out of the way, let's see how we can embarrass ourselves once again. Okay then, so that's accuracy testing out of the way, and in good time too. As I'm sure you can probably tell, it is now starting to get dark and I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. So that's 27 and 40 yards accuracy testing done and out the way. What were the results? Well, now we can have a little close up look at them. Well, first one we'll get out the way is arguably the worst, which are unfortunately the FX pellets. Now, they was a little bit messy at 27 yards, but as you know, we gave them a second chance. At 40 yards, it did open up a bit, as you can see there, with one going off to the right. But that said, let me show you something. And this is obviously aiming at the bullseye. When you put the 5p down, it's not a 5p group at all. Obviously with that one off to the right and they're basically at the corner of the 5p. But it's still a 20p group, which is interesting. We'll put it that way. It's not as bad as it actually looks. It's workable, I'll put it that way. As we move on, we get to the JSB Exact Jumbo Heavies. Now these, again, I think could have actually grouped better if not for the fact that it was starting to get a little bit dark. Obviously we did two groups with 27 yards. You can see there the JSB Jumbos at the top where I knew they could do better. So we did a second one. 5p, spot on. 40 yards, still pretty damn good. Again, it might look a tiny little bit messy. We've still got that one flyer off to the right. I think with every one of these 40-yard groups, we had a flyer somewhere. Again, I'm happy to admit it's me. Put that there, and you've almost once again got a 5p group. That little messy group isn't looking quite so messy now, is it? Finally, though, the champions, which I did not see coming, especially not at the 40-yard mark. I thought that was where it was going to fall apart a little bit. So, 27 yards, you've got this really lovely little group here. Like I said, this up here, from what I can see, looks more like where the card has torn, where the pellets have impacted it, not so much that the pellets went all the way out there. Even if they did, it's pretty much a 5p piece, but we'll drag it sideways there like that, and you can see it's not bad at 27, is it? Now at 40, it's not much worse. As we come up, we do have one flyer off to the right. As we said, I was on the right for some reason at 40 yards. 5p piece down there, as you can see. It's not bad at all, is it? Let's move it across and let's see, can we fully cover it? We've got a dear little tufty bit maybe coming out the bottom and a crease on the top left. Not bad for what would be considered a budget gun, is it? Let's be fair with each other. One shot off to the right, I'm sure we'll probably all agree is me. Well, I'll just show you what I'm having to deal with. Ready? I'm not going to wiggle the camera, I'm just going to tap the table. It's not ideal, is it? Should have got the other table out, but didn't have time, unfortunately. That's not too bad at all, is it? Let's pull that back again. So RWS Superfield, can we say she's accurate? Yes, we bloody can. But how does it all wrap up? Well, let's move along to the final verdict while we can still see, and let's find out. Okay, so final verdict while we can still see each other and I've not been completely eaten yet by mosquitoes. What do we think of the Reximex Accura? Well, there's a lot I like. It's not perfect. I will say that, as we said, mainly silly little things, but it's not perfect. First thing I'm going to say is, and it's not all Turkish guns are like it, don't get me wrong, but it is, as far as I'm aware, mainly a Turkish thing. The fill probe is stupid. You can't probably see it because it's dark. Let me put it in there. Hopefully you can see it a bit better now than what we did before. You can see it's too big. It won't go on your standard sort of quick fill fitting on your whip or pump or compressor, what have you. You've got to have an adapter to go with it. The adapter is threaded, so all of a sudden your quick fill setup is now takes longer than a standard threaded probe that you'd simply plug straight in. It's a long fill system, just designed to bring you heartache and misery. Don't like that at all. Should have been done better. The other thing that, it's not so much I don't like it, it's just more, you do get used to it, I will say that, but it's just more, maybe done it a little bit better. The hollow that we're looking at here, where the probe is, and the pressure gauge as well. I like the fact the pressure gauge is in a sensible place. I mean, it usually is on a bottle gun, to be honest, but it's in a better place than some guns, but at the same time, you should have moved it along or a bit out the way, because your hand is pretty much almost, I'd say, 20% of your hand is resting on that little slot there. And don't be wrong, it's nicely finished. You're not going to cut yourself or anything like that on it, like some of the cheaper stocks out there, but it just feels a bit weird till you get used to it. And again, they're not the only gun that did this. The Crowell Puncher Pro 500, we picked on that as well. We're here to be honest and serious with these reviews when it comes to the verdict, so it has to be said. The other thing I'll say is, if you like maybe a slightly heavier two-stage unit with maybe a more pronounced second stage, this might not be the gun for you. It is a very light two-stage trigger. You can heavy it up a little bit, but it still feels more of a single stage than a two-stage. I actually really like that, and it's predictable too. We wouldn't have had the groups that we had down below if it wasn't, and I believe we did the little finger test too. The other thing I really like is just how smooth that action is. I think we showed, we cocked that off memory with the little finger as well and pushed it home, and you can't do that with many guns, I'll put it that way. But yeah, I mean, the only other downside I can really think of is, why isn't there a walnut stock option? Don't get me wrong, this synthetic, you guys know if you've watched this channel before, you'll know I like a bit of wood. Don't take that out of context either. I like a bit of wood. This, however, where you can fit it and basically custom fit it to whoever wants to shoot the gun, as you can see there, you can make a really nice feeling stock out of that, barring the hole in the front. You can make a really nice feeling stock out of that, and it's genuinely a lot nicer than what you think. The quality of the ballistics polymer plastic on there as well is also much better than what you might think as well. Genuinely, I think I might have said earlier, it might even feel nicer than my synthetic 97. And I know I'm going to get the German boys with the pitchforks and the torches coming after me for that one, but before you kill me and hang me in the barn like a pheasant, touch one and have a little play with it yourself, and you might actually see what I mean. It's a great gun. Consistency wise, pretty damn good. Very good to begin with. I hope this came out on the camera okay. You can see there we had sort of a bit, apologies, it's a bit bright on the camera and the camera's trying to compensate where it's so dark. We had 4 shots that were duplicates, one after the other. You can see there, 10.93, 10.93, 10.93, 10.93. Genuinely superb. Now this little group only goes up to 40 shots. The reason for that, if we didn't mention earlier, was because I believe the battery went on the chronograph, so we had to start again. But pretty good. Power-wise with the jumbos, she starts at about 11.1. I don't know if we got 11.2. It's about 11.1 we'll call it. And then after that, she does sort of settle down. She has sort of like a step, like what you get with the Pretensis. It settles down for a bit, say 10.5, and then it gently bleeds off. So if we do a quick count now and see, where does she bleed off? It bleeds off consistently below 10 feet-pounds, which, as you know, with this channel is where we stop, because we don't call that a full power or higher powered air gun. When it drops below 10, we stop. We've got 226 on there, so plus the 40 we had earlier, that is 266. So it's not bad, is it, for an unregulated gun? Granted, it's got a bottle on the front end, but no reg. There's nothing too wrong with that. Even then, max spread's only 36. I believe for a long time the spread was only 7 or 9 feet per second, I believe. Was it up to about 50 shots, 60 shots? But you'll be able to go through the footage yourself and double check me on that one just to make sure. It's a lovely bit of kit, and as we've already said, obviously the most important thing with owning an air gun, I mean, to an extent, you don't care what it's doing through there as long as it's legal, if it does the business downrange. And thankfully it does. And the other bit that's really impressive, and some really expensive guns can't even claim this, the barrel's actually pretty damn pellet friendly, at least at the 27-yard mark. As you can see, we've got the normal flatheads there, which did pretty well. Not all over the place by any stretch of the imagination, just one little shot goes low, and it's not quite 5 pence. You can see there's a little bit there. You got the rifle pellets that I do actually wish we did try at 40 yards now, just to see what they could do, but there's a little bit of a vertical string there. Could be me, could be the weather, but 5 pence piece, and you can basically see where I'm going with this. Even the Spitfires nearly struck again, almost, if not for the fact there was a bit too vertical spreadish for my tastes, and one little shot did go a bit off there. Could be user error again, happy to admit that. But then we had the real good ones. We had the Superfields, we had the JSB Jumbos, and the FXs, which at 27 yards, at least off camera, did really well. On camera, I couldn't quite match it, so whether the wind picked up or maybe I just went to pot, who knows. But the ones that definitely won out were the Superfields, which in a rare turn of events, I believe, actually shot better on camera than what they did off. So a bit interesting on that one. Could be the barrel letting in a bit. As you know, it's pretty much a brand new gun, and that's the interesting bit. It's only going to get better the more that you let it through, and it's already pretty damn impressive. There we go, just a quick little recap, so we've already just talked about it a few minutes ago. So you got that there, and as we come up, you can see that is 40 yards, as you saw on the camera there, shooting on my very wobbly table, as we've already proven. One little shot went off to the right, but other than that, every single one of those is easily, as I'm sure you'll agree, a kill shot, pretty much no matter what you're aiming at. And considering that's outdoors conditions with a tiny little bit of gust, although it has, now it's got dark, it's settled down, hasn't it? It's just my bloody luck. Yeah, even with a little bit of wind, we still managed to get that. That one, 100% user error. I'll say that here and now. Might have pulled it a bit, I don't know, but that's 100% me. There's a lot to love with the Accura, other than maybe the slightly cheesy name. Even the shroud and such on there, some of the guns we've had on this channel, like the even the ones that come with silencers, the Artemis M16s and things like that, they come with a silencer, and it does work, make no mistake. It makes the muzzle report a lot quieter, but it doesn't do much. A bit like the P15, as a lot of the guys who own them are probably nodding their head again. The standard shroud, not great. This one, however, is fantastic. Genuinely very, very quiet gun. And on top of that, I mean, even if you guys just wanted to shoot it in, say, your garden or pest controlling, what have you, you've got the power adjuster built in there as well. That, sadly, as you can see, we didn't get time to play with, unfortunately. No way the Chronograph is going to pick that up in this light. But it's just an incredibly well-spec'd gun for less than £500. It's hard to pick on it, to be fair. Couple of little niggles, but in the scheme of things, when it can do what it does downrange, and Reximex, and the Turks in general, the Crowls are absolutely fantastic from what testing we've done for customers down the range. Guys, definitely keep this up, because you are making phenomenal guns at this moment in time. And I think the big boys are going to be a little bit threatened. I mean, let's be fair, if your FX was doing that at 40 yards, obviously pardon the flyer, but if your FX was doing that at 40 yards, you wouldn't be complaining, would you? Be honest. Yeah. Reximex, they're coming for you. Or the Accura, as I like to call it, the FXimex. No, but no, thanks ever so much for watching, everyone, and thanks, if we haven't mentioned it already, to Rangerite for sponsoring us for this review and letting us have a little play with this gun. As you know, Rangerite are the importer for Reximex, Crowl and such like that. And if you have any questions, obviously you can get in touch with me if you want. I'll help you out any way I can, or get in touch with Rangerite and they'll definitely see you right, I'll put it that way. But thanks ever so much for watching. I think next time it's only fair that we do a Springer, I think next. And I already know what we're doing. Mr. Richards, if you're watching this, we have a Hatsan Striker in 2.5. You've been waiting for this for a long time, my friend, and we finally have one. So, next one's for you, matey. Right then, we shall see you next time. Take care.